the AEM Champions Office Hours Chapter Group. This is our last event for the season. Thank you for being here. Welcome. We're going to talk about a mini 2025 wrap up if we can contain our excitement for the agentic future, that is. But um, thank you for being here. Let's go over some housekeeping slides. Really important for anyone who does not want to be recorded or shown their names on the screen here or when they're participating in our conversation. So I'm going to start sharing the housekeeping slides for everyone to get it out of the way. First, we talked about our office hours group, but there are other chapters out there. The next event that I know is happening is January 14th. And in the new year, the first event for the Latin American user group. I know Esteban is joining us today, so he's probably really excited about this. January 14th, 26, 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time in the US, depending on where you are. Scan the QR code, if you will, to see more events and attend those at your leisure. You can always RSVP and watch them later, but the QR code there is where you can register for other events. Again, these this office hour groups and then other chapters too. Like, we don't do any self promotion. This is just an advocacy group and general interest group. Do not contact people outside of the user groups that we have here without their consent. If user group members share their use case at the user group, please keep it here. Um, those are general rules that we have here. Again, this is recorded, so if you do not want to participate, just leave the event and then go back and watch on demand. If you have any questions, send the questions to advocacy@adobe.com, either related to events or what we're talking about, or if we don't cover any um, of the questions you have, feel free to email advocacy@adobe.com. And also stay connected with our AM Champion Office Hours chapter. Either scan the QR code here or go to the URL in step one there and register to be a member, create your account, also attend other chapter group meetings. We greatly appreciate it. Or join a chapter yourself and attend your first event. So now we're talking about the new AM agents overall in 2026. We can cover some of the most exciting stuff that happened in 2025, but obviously everybody's excited about the new agentic future for AM. That's what we're going to wrap up and then talk about what was presented in a couple of different forums, like the AEM Champion Forum back in November, and also Developers Live. So we'll be talking about this um, graphic here, all these new agents and what's coming. LLM Optimizer, obviously you've heard about in the center there. Sites Optimizer, you might have seen in last year's summit. There are a few exciting agents that are coming up, like the brand concierge, um, AI answers, new MCP, model context protocol services, and expanded AM Open API and event APIs that are related to agents and new skills in those agents. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen so we can revert back to our conversation. And I guess the other thing I should mention is, do feel free to enter your questions in the QA bubble, not in the chat. If you do it in the chat, that's fine. We're going to move it over to QA or take the answer from there. But just to keep it in order, just do it in the QA. Okay, enough with me mumbling. We're going to provide links here also in the chat so you guys can visit what we have from Adobe, any tips, any sort of resources that we can share with you. We'll do it here in the chat as well. So to kickstart the conversation, I guess this is a question for everyone, including you in the audience here. Anything that stands out from 2025 before we move on to 2026? Anything that was, I guess, a follow up to last year's summit? Anything exciting that happened after that? And if you mostly probably partners or partners with clients, if you got any cool integrations going on, anything exciting based on what you saw in Summit, basically, like Sites Optimizer, I don't know, things like that. Nothing exciting.
I think it all is. 2025, I think the biggest thing that I've seen that is exciting is not necessarily a specific product as much as the evolution. Um,
Yeah,
a lot of things have started. Um, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, AEP came into play,
yeah,
right? And in all honesty, everybody looked at it and then everybody was like, I don't know what it does. I have Adobe Analytics, I have Adobe Target, I have Forms, I have these set of products that were fully established, and then AEP came out. And until we've started seeing customer journey and all the other stuff that came in and personalization that's based on AEP, and then understanding the sort of the new formats of things, it didn't make sense back then, but I think it makes sense today. And I feel like 2025 with AI, because you have to say AI in every single sentence you say now, I think we're in the same spot. There's been a lot of seeds that were planted, but they have not evolved. And I think that's probably why you're not getting an answer, right? Because we're talking about MCPs, we're talking about agents. A lot of the time, even fundamentally, when you're talking in businesses, everybody says, can you use AI to do it? The problem is we cannot define what it is. For the folks on the call or in the audience that have done RFPs or done requirement gathering and then implementation, you realize that the easiest part of implementing is implementing. The hardest part is to get to a point or to a thing to implement, right? It's gathering these business units and understanding what's going on. And I feel like with AI, we're at a point where we have this thing, this hammer, but we just don't know what the right nail is yet. And I feel like going into 2026 and going into like all the agents that we have, we started by Site Optimizer, and Site Optimizer was not, it wasn't really AI as much as SEO analysis of sites. And then that started going into LLM, right? And I feel more and more things like asset analyzation and being able to tag assets automatically and on all this power within something like Firefly or even outside, but integrating with Adobe products. I think it's more of a 2026 thing. So 2025 is a stepping stone to what's going to happen in 2026.
I like the hammer analogy. We're swinging it now in 2026. We're going to find out what's actually a nail.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
yeah. The one thing I wanted to add, Brahmi, and thank you for your feedback, is I saw the move to for on the client side migration to cloud because the clients realize, oh, maybe we're missing the boat here because or we're already late because a lot of these features and agentic future of AM is dependent on cloud. That the services want to get there first because if we don't do that, uh, we might be late in the game or we might not get the newest best greatest features because I saw a lot of clients, Adobe clients, inquiring about like, okay, what do we need to do, what's the best way to migrate and use this feature. So I saw a lot of that from 2025 once like this agentic future was announced.
I think to Rami's point, it felt a little bit overwhelming sometimes. There's a lot of agents going on and a lot of new documentations. But as Rami pointed out, this is just seed. So when you start trying to dive into this, you find out that this is still in progress, or it's still not GA, or it's still you need to contact Adobe. So I think 2026 is going to be really excited because we actually have the product in our hands fully, and we can see what's going on with that in what really fits to our clients and our needs. So that's going to be interesting.
Yep.
Agreed. I think 2025 was a lot about like laying the groundwork with like what can AI do so far, and then 2026 will be like, we can actually start doing things now that we've played around with it, we've made our proofs of concept, and we know that we want to invest in it for a lot of us.
Should we should we go into like I guess I posted in the chat a link about the existing agents that we're seeing from Adobe. It was actually, this page was updated on right on Thanksgiving here. Um, so that shows how recent like everything is, and what Brett was saying before we started recording as well. A lot of it is like we're actually evolving, we're seeing things evolving, and we're learning along as we go. But a lot of those agents, what I'm seeing is like we're something that also Brett mentioned, like the things that subconsciously were happening in the brains of like developers, admins, anyone who was mostly back end or administration EM. All this unconscious stuff is also like being fed into those agents, and those agents have specific skills, and those skills are really dependent on the specificity that whomever is working on a context protocol server is inputting in the system. So when I'm looking at those agents that I see here in the documentation, it looks like, so we heard about agent orchestrator, and that sits on top experience platform, and then everything else is slowly being built around the marketing enablement of things. What does that mean for you? Like, because I see it as like we're ground zero, and all the information that is being fed into those different MCP servers, it's going to take a while. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to. It feels like everyone is learning from one another, and all together, we're trying to figure out how to feed our best um, subconscious ideas into the systems. What do you guys think? And if any of these agents that we're seeing here in the overview of agents in AM in this page is really is going to stand out, I guess, based on what you've seen so far.
It's going to be very interesting to see how the different agents, like which ones stand out, because like, yeah, there's multiple different agents, and I think some we're gonna find that some apply to the problem space better than others. The other thing that I'm just my perspective in general on making AI work is I think it's very difficult to solve a generic problem with AI.
Mhm.
I think it's a lot simpler to solve specific problems. Like, remember, when you're applying AI, you're not asking it, make me content.
Yep.
You're asking it, make me content in my system, according to my business, according to my governance, according to my situation. Same thing with coding and AI skills. Like, Rob, you got a really good question in terms of like, hey, should developers be picking up vibe coding, and should they be picking up AEM skills and such? Yes, asterisk. I would say, according to what you are currently doing, is very difficult to try to learn everything that's out there, because you don't know what you're going to need. If you're working on it on an EDS site, yeah, you absolutely should be upskilling, and how can you do EDS coding better? But do you need to be learning AEM live right now if you're currently working in a system that's a legacy implementation that's going to be years out from moving to EDS? If you ask me what would be a better use of time, it would be like, hey, no, how do I actually apply AI to my current situation? You know, if Adobe produces skills to do EDS coding, well, why don't I make some skills? Because no matter what Adobe produces for skills in these different areas, those will be great starting points, but they're not going to be specific to your code. Like, I don't want AI to tell me how to code AEM. I want it to tell me how to code AEM in my code base according to my patterns and using my classes, and so that I can still manage this beast and I don't create a complete mess. And so I don't think, I think some people have the temptation to feel like they're so far behind because they haven't gotten all these latest and greatest things. And I don't think so. I think, we could all kind of look at what do we currently do today? How can I use AI and how can I follow the patterns that are being established in these areas, like content governance, et cetera. Like the idea of a governance agent in AEM is a great idea. What exactly that agent does, we'll find out over time, but you don't necessarily have to wait for that. I was talking with Esteban yesterday, like in some cases, like some people are on-prem. They don't even might not have access to those until they move to cloud service. But Esteban's been doing AI stuff in AEM for the last 2 years. And you can take bits and pieces. I would look at these concepts and say, like, these are the areas that Adobe's trying to apply AI. And even if the agents are currently working, is there small bits and pieces in those areas, like coding, like content governance, like content production, where I can start applying it in my use case and doing a little thing, even though it's not as sexy as saying I replaced the whole process. Like, yeah, but if you take a few things away from an author and like take a little bit of like dirty grunt work away from them by, hey, click this button and it gives you this thing, like you make some pretty good friends pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. I'm just, yeah, for me on the client side and like knowing my organization and how we work, things like, because I'm in this now, site migration skill, like within the migration agent, site migration agent, like things like that they sound like a generic prescription, uh, but with with all the details that our team could be entering in like our memory bank and like using it in our MCP server. Um, if that would be a blueprint essentially, excuse me, for other clients, that's where a value is um, like paramount for me for these agents, like a site migration skill that translates to like unlocking similar problems in the future, if it has the same, I guess, skills, the same specifications, same requirements fed into in their system that helps clients in the same verticals. Um, that's an exciting thing. Other things are like uh, obviously governance and creating content with the use of AI skilled agents. Those are huge. But then again, those are all like marketing based. Um, so I don't know how long they're gonna take to be refined, essentially.
And I think in the long run, you will actually have to pick up some of them, and you cannot implement all of them, of course,
Yeah.
because even if you choose something like this agent that help you to find assets or whatever, they Adobe force you to have, or at least recommend you to have the dynamic media on top of it, so you can have fully advantage of that agent. So in the very long run, you need to pick up which ones really fit, not really to your usage, but um, how this can enhance your productivity in the very end. Because you can just you can search assets pretty easy right now with the new content hub stuff. So bringing an agent that just give you the asset itself. If you are not connected to dynamic media and you cannot tweak the renditions or something, then this agent becomes just a more fancy way to look for assets, which is fine. But in the very end, perhaps not what you need so far. So as I was saying, perhaps there's a lot of stuff now that we need to start picking up, seeing really what fits our best in our needs, and see how those can evolve, so we can try to see which ones to pick up. Really, like another thing that I don't want to deviate from the topic, but another thing that happened in 2025 was this announcement of the new AEM LTS, and AEM 6.5 being communicating. So I think that put us start looking to migrating clients to EDS, and then this agent from migration makes sense, and perhaps it's a good option to start looking at it. So it really depends on your use case in the long run. Not necessarily something that you need to solve this time, but something that you potentially have to deal with for a couple of years at least.
That's a good point. I feel like that's exactly what we're seeing is like a lot of the agents they have like a little bit more narrow use case and they don't apply to every project or every client. So we kind of pick and choose like which ones we think will be a good fit. And then we can fill the gaps too with like vibe coding or custom AI development or other tool sets because there's like a whole world out there. So that's like where we've seen a lot of success with vibe coding, honestly, is like we use a site migration agent, but then we vibe code up like some separate scripts to help migrate these custom implementations that are really tricky to migrate with this. So like pairing those together has been like really effective for us so far.
Yeah.
Maybe Greg, to go back to your previous question, like what are we actually working on? So I maybe just to mention a few things that I'm currently looking at, and I'm not really deep into like all the AI stuff, but I try to be as up to date as I can. And I agree with Rami. I mean, it's just started and it's everywhere. It's popping up like on all the places. So and you pick up the things that your business needs or you think that are going to bring value. But a lot of it is still in like a POC MVP phase. So I also like when I look at those tools, like you need to look at them really like, is this really capable of bringing value in my setup? Because as Brad mentioned, like some things work only in ADS, for example, and like it's not really relevant for you if you're using classic AEM sites, no matter if you're on-prem on cloud. It'll come, but it's not there yet. So what I'm currently using, definitely one thing is translations. So we started with like a custom implementation for integration with translation providers. It's basically just a custom button you add in sites and it translates the whole site for the editors. And we have, of course, the old way of doing it using like translation providers where there are actually people reviewing those translations. And actually the first feedback we got from editors, especially for some specific languages, is that AI is doing a better job than the agencies, which is really interesting. And I think that's one area where, definitely already now there are some services that are so good that they're ready to be used. Second thing is it's kind of small API things where you teach, for example, a model to do a very specific thing. For example, if you have like products on your pages, and most like AEM clients do, they are selling something online. Then instead of for example, product recommendation that's based on like just finding some similar products by category, you can really easily train AI in a good way to recommend products that really make sense to go with this product or are similar to this product or compatible with this product and use cases like that. So I think that is also one thing that we can already do now with some customization. Site Optimizer, LLM Optimizer, I mean, both very promising tools. I think Site Optimizer I haven't used it yet because I'm not on EDS and like there is not that much then value in my specific project, but there is still value in getting the feedback. But there are still other tools. We all have probably Lighthouse. We all have some kind of security checks, right? And this like, I haven't like the big benefit of bringing it to my project at the moment. But LLM Optimizer is for me really interesting because I think that's in the business mind like one of the top priority topics right now.
Yeah.
And it's great to see that Adobe is like one of the firsts on the market to like target that niche that's going to be, I think, huge business in the future. But again, I mean, the problem, I don't think there is a problem with tool. Like the problem is like still with like how to set it up, like from a business perspective.
Yeah.
Like, how do I know what my users are actually inputting in whatever ChatGPT and asking them? Like, how do I identify those queries that they are asking the LLM? I think that's like still the more critical part and really hard to do, like from a business perspective. Then, you know, the technology is kind of already there.
Yeah, that's a good point. And specifically with LLM Optimizer, if anyone has used the extension, you can see that it will show you the HTML view, the human eye view. Like, do folks know what to do with this information? How, like you said, like how does the information populate, and why does it show displays the results that it does? That's going to be a key part of the translation, not actual language translation, but the business um, translation that needs to happen there.
Yeah, I do think, you know, with LLM Optimizer too, one of those, it's actually a really nice tool where you can pull it up in your browser, for those that are, you know, at your current, you know, if you work at a company or if you work in professional services, like either way, where you can show a customer like, hey, you need to redo this page. Look at what the LLMs are seeing, right? And especially like, you run into this regularly on CMSs. Like somebody got in their mind that they wanted to build a server side page, but they wanted to render it all in Angular or render it all in React or whatever. And it's like, because that was the technology they wanted to use for the front end. And you know, in many cases, there's a good reason. Like if you're actually doing a SPA, yep, okay, you need to do that. And you might have to figure out how to feed that information to the LLM. But if you're doing it on like a static website with URLs and all the information is not visible, like this could be a great opportunity to show the business like, hey, these things can't read your pages. We need to redo this. We need to get rid of this technical debt from our system. And it's just a really nice, easy to understand visual way, because like it shows you what the LLM optimizer sees. And when you can look at the page and see like there's literally no content here that's actually usable because it's just a bunch of like tokens and placeholders and stuff. It, you know, makes that station more easy to have.
One more thing to add to what Brad said. I think like one thing we are missing still, if I look at like what LLM Optimizer is doing versus like what Google is doing with like SEO. Is it called GEO, or how do we call it now? I forgot.
GEO,
Yeah, I think that the main thing we are missing, and that's probably gonna come at some point, like analytics. Like like ChatGPT and others, like they will probably need to come up with some analytics so that the business knows what their users are searching for and where they're showing up and where they're up. Because right now, I think we are just guessing. We are guessing what our users might search for. And there are some really great advices like how to optimize, like more FAQ, yes. But it's still a lot of guessing in that whole process. And I think that is something that will probably change next year. I hope it will change. Because that's the big difference. Because with with web, you get a lot of analytics and data, and you make decisions based on data, not on gut feeling, and that's, I think, still like a big difference between the two.
The other piece of LLM Optimizer, though, that I feel like nobody really talks about, but like we have to understand too, the world and how it monetizes the LLM results, that's evolving as well too. Like, how does Google, when you get a Gemini answer, actually attribute it to you in a way that is actually meaningful to your business? Because, like, for instance, one of my customers, bunch of tax information, their whole goal is to get you on their site to fill out a form. And we know that that's not happening anymore because the site anymore, because they're getting the answer from Gemini. But then that almost makes it feel like to that customer, like, well, wait, I don't actually want my content to be LLM optimized because I don't want you to stop at the answer. I want you to actually get to my website. And so I think, even Google and all the other players out there, they have to think through, how do we do this in a way, and how do we actually bake attribution into these answers in a better way to motivate people to want to get their stuff to show up in there. And as that continues to evolve, that's also going to change how much businesses actually care about this. It's like interesting because, like, as I talk with customers now, like they're like, well, we're not sure if we care that that's not ranking in the LLMs yet. So that's an interesting. We got a lot of moving things all at the same time here.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see like if any standards emerge too. I know they're trying to push like LLMs.txt files as a possible solution, but Google already came out and said they won't respect those. So if they do go with that, then that'll only work for like ChatGPT and like, so a few other ones. So it's like, what will be the universal standard? Will there be one? Will we revert back to like HTML table development on our websites so it's super readable for the robots? Like it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
So I know we focus on LLM a little bit. Do we want to like maybe jump to one of the other agents? Like I'd be curious if people have been playing around with any content or the experience production agent or other, because there are actually other tools in the market in that particular vein. Some that were actually shared last year at Summit.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting, right? Like because it depends on how long you've been using. I think how long you've been on cloud too. Because if you're or like managed services, you're not part of that interaction. Like everything from the way your menus look, the dashboard, to the whole thought process of how content uh, ties into different parts of the architecture is different. So I think that's why I was saying earlier, like with content optimization now, um, well, and those agents it's going to be a very slow exploratory period, I think, where people are going to be trying to use that agent orchestrator, but you have to be using AEP, and then everything else, the umbrella of the rest of the agents underneath that for content optimization. Um, and then you have AEM answers agent. Like there are a lot of there are a lot of specialized agents that will feed into the content optimization part that you're asking about. So I think it's really early right now. Um, but I don't know.
I'm pretty excited about the answers one, to be honest, because like I
Yeah.
feel like that's if we think about the world and where AI is right now, what's AI really good at right now? It's phenomenal at searching and giving you an answer for site content that's already out there on the web. And so I think that's one that we're going to probably see some pretty quick success with. Honestly, I've been waiting for years, like, ever since Adobe got rid of search and promote, which whether it was good or bad, we don't need to discuss. But it was always absurd to me that there was no great out-of-the-box search capability that went along with AEM. And I'm really kind of hopeful that AEM Answers becomes that.
Yeah.
You just give away your age there, Brett, with search and promote. It has been a while.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Well, for the folks on the call, have you used any of these agents? Now, it is fairly new. Like a lot of these things happened within the last month or 2 or 6 months. Have you actually used them? What's your experience with them? Please share your thoughts.
Yeah. And if we could address like Raf's like question about regarding the latest offerings from authoring and agents, and was using like edge delivery document authoring versus universal editor, traditional um, development and creation. That's those are all. That's what I was saying earlier. Like without edge delivery services, or like if you're on cloud, without being on cloud, like all those questions become harder. Like unicorn quality.
So for Raf, by the way, you're asking some pretty awesome questions. It's almost like I feel like we should sit down and discuss. But so experiences with authoring, I just want to confirm that this is not in relation to AI or agents. You're just thinking, how do people feel about authoring in different environments, whether it's doc-based versus universal editor, etc. Correct?
Yeah.
And I'll assume the answer is yes. And it's very opinionated. So I have actually seen clients that started with doc authoring and then eventually moved into universal editor because they like the idea of WYSIWYG. And I've seen it happen the other way around. What I have noticed though is in general, traditional AEM sites are not on the increase. I don't know, Brett and Daniel and everybody else on the call. Sorry, I was going to say everybody's name, then I realized, hey. But if you guys have seen that as well, and I think it has to do with the EDS push, so the edge delivery push. So when we went from on-prem to AMS to cloud was the way to go because that's where the development was happening and all the new stuff was happening. But now everything is EDS. That's really Adobe's focus, and for a good reason, whether it's performance or ability to integrate with APIs and all this good stuff. So generally seen as much traditional AEM sites net new. There is a lot of legacy in there and folks that we're dealing with. But I've seen a lot of push for universal editor, not even single page application, which I am not complaining about, to be honest. But I've seen a lot of universal editor.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely agree. Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you a perspective from personally. I'm planning on getting the Edge Delivery Services certification as I'm learning more about it because that's where I think the value is, and I hope my content authors are thinking the same, and a lot of my front end devs. So that decoupling is important of traditional AM logic and front end. So.
And I know Cameron has a question in there. Essentially saying the user is going to control their own personalization. Do we need personalization engines?
I'll start to write an answer to this one.
Right?
Yeah, just someone too.
Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
I was gonna say I don't think it's so. Yes, they're both personalization, but those are two different things. I think you're serving two different purposes. When I'm using tweaks to modify how this looks, I'm basically making the brand look the way I want it to look like to me. Personalization of the business is trying to answer questions that you don't even know that you're not asking. And so you can't even personalize it yourself the way that I want to personalize it for you, because I'm trying to tell you things about my business that you didn't automatically run into yourself, and give you maybe a different perspective of my business to you that you don't already have. Whereas I think what you're doing on tweaks is a little bit more the opposite of like, hey, this is what I think of you and I want you to kind of look this way and I want to kind of customize you to fit my need. So maybe there's some use cases where like if it was just trying to like make the site more convenient from the business perspective, sure. But I think in terms of like trying to portray to you that I'm this type of business and I can help you in this type of way, all that is still relevant because a user's not gonna be able to do that for themselves.
Yeah, agreed. Like most of the personalization we do with like marketing teams is like, oh, you're a 45-year-old woman in Montana. We're going to recommend this like fuzzy sock ad to you instead of this grill brush. Like, it's just things like that, like on shopping sites, like that's not going to go away. But like installing Chrome extensions for like blocking parts of the page or like different modifications that the user wants to do, I could see it competing with stuff like that.
Yep.
Keep in mind too that the matter of the fact is, at least I hope, the person that knows the business the most is the business, right? So you know your products, you know what you're trying to sell. It's there, and that's, you go into CDP because it's not just about who you are; it's about others like you also like, right? And that's a humongous statement because believe it or not, there are things that you like that you didn't know you liked until you go to Amazon and they have this cross sell at the bottom of the page, and you're like, So again, I think personalization it's meant to show you things you do not know, that there's an engine that's smart enough to realize that you like, which is a lot different from you customizing the site the way you want it. So I 100% agree. I don't think that's going anywhere. I think it's just going to get smarter. That takes you off takes you to like audience and audience activation and campaigning. I think, and going back to AI, before a lot of the times it was based on statistics that come in from analytics reports, or it comes in from I don't know, whatever you have, Power BI, etc. And then you as a business, you're making the decision that this is an audience that I need to target it. But agents eventually will come in because it's data. And anything that can consume or consider consuming a lot of static data, I think AI can come in and do that for you and come up with that result pretty easily. So I think personalization is not going away. Understanding the business better through data might be handed off to AI for them to create these audiences and be able to activate them at the right time automatically.
It's scary to think about it getting smarter. I already get ads that I'm like, dang it, you got me. Now I'm going to buy this, but I'm not happy about it.
If I can again take a step back, because someone mentioned, like, I think you, Greg, that everything is kind of going in the EDS direction. And now when I think about 2025, beginning of it and end of it, I saw, like, I think beginning of 2025, like there was like two kind of directions where you take your AEM. So you go with Universal Editor, you can use Edge Lever Services, but into your whatever front-end implementation. And this is, I think, at least in my eyes, has been very cool, because if you compare AEM to any of the other very popular like headless CMSs, this kind of gives you the same option, like to fully decouple your front end and build it with whatever you want, right? And most other CMSs, I don't think they're offering something like EDS, like we also handle your front end. So I kind of saw it two ways, like in Adobe, you go with EDS, or you want something more customized, then you build your own front end, but you can still use Universal Editor and all the great things from AEM Author. But I think all of these like agentic stuff that came in later changes the game a little bit, because it's all EDS now, and like none of those features will work if you went with whatever custom front-end solution it is. If I'm happy about it, not really. So because I think, you know, that's also a risk that maybe some clients that have those requirements would go with a different solution. But I think maybe that is something that we will see addressed also next year. Yeah, I'm not sure if we want to talk about the development part of experience, or we want to keep it just to like the tools. But I think that's also interesting, because there was some questions about like developer skills and like if we need to use AI or will AI eat all the developers. We can also talk about that.
It was Raf, wasn't it? It was Raf. Yeah. And I you know, he comes up with great questions. Actually, he has another one in there too, asking if essentially AI first is going to be a bust. What I'm about to say is personal opinion. I don't know, but you remember the .com bust? It did not kill the internet, right? It evolved into something else. It evolved into what we have today. You still have the financial dependencies. Internet goes down, banks go bankrupt, right? So it evolved into something that controls essentially the world. So do I see AI disappearing and it's going to be a bubble that just goes kaboom? Parts of it will, not all of it. I think things are going to go bad and other things will evolve into something else. So it's not going away. So just keep that in mind. And I think a lot of it too, I think we're all overwhelmed, even the people that work with it day in and day out, because you go to sleep. I remember when front end was a thing, right? So at some point we had JSPs and everything was these holistic files, and front end was not a thing. And then front end decoupled from the back end. And then front end, every time you go to sleep and you wake up, there is a Facebook somewhere that creates a single page application thing that you have to use, and you learn it. And it was very overwhelming because you're learning a lot of stuff. And I think that's what's happening with AI right now. That it's almost like a chain reaction in different directions, and you don't know which direction to take. eventually it will mainstream. Eventually there will be rules and policies around it. To Lauren's point from earlier, we need standards. Standards don't exist because we're in a discovery phase. So with that, as you're doing it, some branches of the tree will get trimmed and other branches will just get longer. But the tree ain't going away. It's staying.
I love that analogy. Yes, we're going to see a bubble burst, but that doesn't mean AI is going away. The web away, a lot of websites and a lot of companies did. But yeah, it's great. I think it's a great analogy, Rami.
Yep, I think Krasimir is agreeing in the Q&A as well, and that's a good point.
And I kind of said this earlier. I still just think the industry is evolving, and we're even seeing this. If you didn't catch the webinar yesterday from Adobe, Best of AI in 2025, I recommend go back and actually watch it. It's a really good webinar, and you can even hear people are starting to say different things like AI, but with people at the center. And because we learned in 2025 that if you just throw AI at a business problem, it doesn't solve it. And so like, okay, we're at least starting to say different things and go at problems differently. I do think there's a lot of pressure in the industry to be selling these, I'm going to solve this overarching thing for you. I'm going to manage content for you. I'm going to organize assets for you. I'm going to tag assets for you. And what we're finding is that AI is really good at helping you do those things, but not actually doing those things for you. But it's a lot sexier to sell you the top-down solution of I'm going to replace this thing for you. And where I think, I think people don't really think through the amount of work that actually takes. That's not a technology problem. That's an organizational process problem, of which technology is one piece of it. And so for that reason alone, I think you're going to see a lot of these initiatives fail because these are like multi-year processes to completely reimagine your company to be thinking and doing things AI first. And I think, some will make it, many won't. But I think you'll see a lot more success that we don't even hear about. It's going to be the individual person that figures out how to do AI and fit it into their process of how they're currently doing it. That's not anywhere near as newsworthy to a lot of people, but I think you're going to see a lot of small wins like that. And then I think over time, what's going to happen is in years, and it might not be 10 years, it might be 2 years, but we'll see these things build up, and all of a sudden, from all those low-level wins, they'll aggregate up, and then we will actually have these top-level solutions, but we'll have gotten there by all the little wins in the meantime, which I think should be exciting for a lot of people because there's going to be a huge opportunity for people doing real things to show up and say, look what I built, and be recognized for things that are actually producing real results. Because, and Adobe said this yesterday in the call, like 3 years ago or 2 years ago when AI hit, it was cool that everybody just try a bunch of things. Now when you start talking to CMOs and talking to people, it's like, hey, if we're going to be doing AI stuff, you better show me how this is actually saving me real money. Like the results are being required of people now. We're kind of past the whole, go ahead, try a bunch of things, and we don't care. We're just investing. Like now we got to see some real results.
Yep.
One maybe thing we haven't talked about so much is content generation. And I know probably like everyone knows how to do this, right? It's pretty simple, like to integrate with whatever service and get some content created for you. I would be interested to hear your opinion on the more like higher level long-term consequences of that. Because like I was discussing also with one of my clients, like how do we approach this? And like one of the main questions that was brought up, like how will the tools, like for example, search engines, but also LLMs themselves, how will they rate content in the future? Because we see more and more AI generated content, right? So do you think we will in the future have metrics that will actually check, okay, is this content that real stuff? Has that been written by an expert or edited by an expert? Or has it just been spilled out by another AI tool that put it on the internet, and now I'm learning from that and like putting it into my model and giving other people recommendations based on it. So how do you see that future developing?
Can you imagine if there's an AI that checks the accuracy of an AI? Reminds me of Sonar Cube. Let me go through your code. code to tell you how bad your code is.
Quality sets.
But I see that happen. In all honesty, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. Just like you have ChatGPT, and you sort of have to come to it and be like, hey, by the way, don't lie. Just say the truth. Come on. And we've actually, even in the news, you've seen companies that are essentially writing these $1 million reports using AI. But I honestly think at some point, governance will leak to become, instead of it being a human-centric element, it will have an AI element where essentially I can see a university, for example, a university creating this AI thing where you can feed in the assignments and it will come back and go, this has been 80% generated by ChatGPT. Or here's the accuracy of it, etc. It seems like the natural evolution to things. I don't know what you guys think.
But the question I would ask about that, because so going back to the 80% this was generated, and I know that's a huge problem for colleges right now. I asked myself though, are we making a problem of something that isn't a problem? And it actually goes back to your question too, Daniel, where we said but if all this content's generated on your site, should we down level it because it was generated by AI? Actually, no. We should probably still just care about whether the content's good or not. And I would ask the question, even for colleges, will we eventually start thinking about this problem differently? So what if somebody actually generated their essay response from ChatGPT? Because that's the tools available to people today. Remember when we were kids and we were yelled at for can't use a calculator on your test because are you going to have a calculator every time that you're in the store? Are you going to have? Yeah, guess what? I am going to have a calculator wherever I am, 100% of the time. So
love that analogy.
It's a real question that we have to ask ourselves: is are we fighting against it because it's new and it's like, wait a minute, I had to spend hours in researching and writing those stupid papers and kids are generating them. That's not fair. But if the content is actually good and accurate and the essay is actually good, the valuable, I don't know, it begs the question, should it be graded against? And that kind of goes full circle back to what you're saying, Daniel. Just because somebody generates all the content for their site, if they do a really good job of it, maybe it should still rank perfectly great.
Yep.
But that's a really good point.
Lane. Yeah, I'm gonna because now I'm thinking, not related, but if you think about it, if it is AI generated, would it come to a point where it can take the tone of the person generating the content? So if you and I ask ChatGPT the same question to generate the same report, will it come a point where AI understands that it's Brett and here is his tone of voice and here is his beliefs, his understandings, right? Versus Rami, who thinks totally different. So you can have the same report, both are accurate. Right? I don't know. So I'm going to stop here because that freaks me out a little bit.
Yeah, we don't need another Rami. We don't need a bot Rami. Good Lord.
Yeah, that's that's the question kind of that Raf put in the chat, or the thought that, especially for creatives, you don't have any distinguishable, or rather you have very specific behaviors augmented or being adopted by AI. So yeah, that's only one of the ethical considerations that most of us are struggling with.
I just need to reply to what Brett said, because I fully agree with what you said, Brett, and I know this is going to be the future. At least I'm pretty sure. I think the problem with AI generated content is this, validation step, and some I think also Raf, of course, asked, is there going to be content management? I think we will always need content management, no matter who writes the content, right? Because that validation is the most important thing for anyone working with AI in any type of format, because we know it's far from perfect. It tells you complete bullshit from time to time, 80% correct, 20% complete bullshit and nonsense. And the question is, if the content is great, if it's validated, if 80% of it or even 100% is written by AI, but it's still valid and someone has checked it, how do we do that validation? Do we get people to sign on the on the pages they validate so that people and tools know, okay, this has been validated. I don't know, it's an AEM article and it's been, validated by Rami. He's an AI expert. Okay, so I'm going to trust this content a little bit more than a content without any type of validation. So I think that's like the interesting thing. But I completely agree with your point. Yeah.
And the temptation is going to be enormous to not actually validate because of the amount and stuff of generated. And by the way, I'm seeing this already. Like I see this on like code reviews and such. Like you find artifacts that I know that that's from a bot that wrote that piece of code, because just the way that comment would have been or whatever, that came from a question that the developer asked. And guess what? The developer didn't think to clean that comment up because it was just too tempting once the code worked to leave it as is and put it in that way. And so like I'm already starting to see just the little bits and pieces of that. And I think there's going to be a huge temptation to just like, you know what, content, I generated 1,000 pages. Yeah, let's just click the button, publish.
Yeah. There is a governance agent, by the way. But
hey, that's actually, yeah, and that's maybe where these start interplaying, right?
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, there's like tweaks in the governance levels. Yeah. By the way, there are a lot of there was a question on AI, AEM AI answers and whether there's information. There's a beta program. I added information in the chat. I think in response to Leslie's question. A lot of that stuff is really new. So you're going to see them in release notes. About beta programs, feedback. But there's a specific email address, feedback AI, I think, at adobe.com, where if you are interested to get in touch with, because they're interested in obviously doing those agents in practice and communicating to clients. So and am.now is the other site where you can request playground to play with AI agents, like Ruff says. So a lot of that stuff, and you're going to see a lot of that in Summit too, in April. So just wanted to point
You
that
think?
out. From now on, yes, it's all that.
Yeah, and it's also interesting how, like, with all the AI hype, all the development focus goes into AI. It's like everyone forgets, like, we still have a bunch of these problems
Yep.
that were not solved, like, and feature requests that are not getting anywhere because all the focus is on AI, which is also interesting. And everyone
Yeah.
seems to be okay with it. So
There's always a null exception somewhere.
yeah, of course.
Okay, we're coming up the hour here. I don't know, like, if you guys in the audience want to participate, or have any questions that you want to submit, like verbally, or join us in the conversation, feel free to do so. Um, we we will be obviously posting more links here in the chat with the agents. The other event that Brett mentioned, and I think Callian mentioned, there's a he added the link here, so you get the best of Adobe on AI for 2025. That's another interesting link here. But I don't think we have any other questions. Yeah. I think we covered pretty much all of those. I guess coming into a new year, I think we will see more of these sessions from other chapters, local chapters, user groups that we have here in AM user groups. So keep an eye out for all those. Um, but yeah, I mean, if we don't have anything else, just wanted to point out the next event is January 14th, the Latin American folks. Um, so join them to learn about events, an AM event session. Um, More details from our very own Esteban here, who's in the call. But yeah, join them on January 14th. Register for that to attend. And if you have any other questions, send them to advocacy@adobe.com so they let us know when we can answer in the Experience League community, or reach out to you who have questions. So yeah, everyone, happy holidays. Thank you to all our AEM champions for joining us, and from all over the world as well. So if we don't talk, happy holidays, happy new year to everyone, and we'll see you in the next year. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.